Everybody, this is Tim Peck here on Project Next Media on the Dr. Tim Show. We have a special guest today, Jon Macy, professor at IU, who is going to get into some facts about guns and suicide and how guns happen to be the number one leading cause of suicide. So trying to have a mature, deep discussion, as well as a vulnerable one, about something that affects all of our communities and has affected many of our families. And we'll get into the public health viewpoints here. We'll tell some personal stories and hear from Jon. So Sarah, welcome. Jon, welcome. Jon, please tell us a bit about yourself and what your position at IU is and how you got into this type of research.
Yeah, thanks for having me on this show. I really appreciate the opportunity. Yep, so I'm a professor at IU in Bloomington, and I've been in public health my entire career. And I've always been interested in, kind of what factors motivate people to engage in certain behaviors or not. I spent a lot of time. I just spent a lot of time studying the issues that cause a lot of illness and death in our country and in the world. And I used to spend a lot of time studying cigarette smoking and trying to figure out how to help people quit who want to quit, and then keep kids from starting to smoke in the first place. And as most of us know, we've had great success in reducing smoking rates over the past 50 years or so. It's been a real public health victory. And so I've kind of decided, let's move on to another public health challenge that we have. And that's one of gun violence, one that, we can do a lot of the same sorts of things. It's a similar issue. If you think of it as a public health issue, there's things that we can do to prevent unnecessary deaths from guns. And so I've been doing a lot of work to try to figure that out. And so that's kind of what I've been up to. I've been at IU for 20 years and love my job, love teaching, love trying to understand how to solve these complex problems.
Yeah, big problems, big meaty problems to get into, and some similarities between smoking and suicide prevention for sure. There's industries involved in terms of working to not only have human behavior changes, but also societal changes, and it has economic implications as well. So, Sarah, you were excited to come on to this show and be part of Dr. Tim Show today. What has driven you to want to be part of today's show?
I see this issue affecting my community. And also I had my own suicide experience a year and a half ago. And that really, let me put you on. Whoa, there we go. And that really showed me what a serious issue this is. So Jon has let me know that the number one cause of gun deaths in Indiana is from suicide. And when I had my own suicidal thoughts, scary thing happened a year and a half ago, it was so fast. It was bam, the thoughts came. I had thought that I had harmed my child and his well-being. I thought I hurt my husband and his well-being, even though it wasn't really true and they were fine. And bam, I had the things where I shouldn't be alive. And I knew from listening to experts on other podcasts talk about suicide prevention that most suicides occur about 2.5 minutes after you have the initial thought. So if you do not know that it comes really fast and really quickly people act, and you don't know what to do, which is to call a loved one or call the suicide hotline, which is 988. And if you have a gun that is such an easy weapon to use, I get it. I get why it's so quick to do it. So what can we do to protect everyone? Because one, I never thought I would have suicidal thoughts at the age of 43, and I did. So anybody can have them. And two, what do we do to make sure if that happens, you do not have a weapon nearby, your loved ones don't have a weapon nearby, that they could listen to those thoughts instead of getting help?
Yeah. Jon, your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, You took me off mute. Thank you. Yeah, I think all the gun violence is in the news all the time, right? But what tends to get attention are the terrible, terrible things that happened with mass shootings at schools, or when when a celebrity type person is involved in a gun violence incident, like just recently happened. But I think what most people don't realize, and this is true in Indiana, and it's also true nationally, is that more than half and upwards of 60% of gun violence deaths are actually suicides.
Wow.
And the suicides, it doesn't get hardly any attention for obvious reasons. It's a private thing. There's a lot of stigma associated with it. People don't like to talk about the fact that a loved one or somebody in their community committed suicide. It's a terrible, tragic, scary, sad thing. So it's understandable. But I think if more people are aware that actually the majority of gun deaths are suicide deaths, and we can reframe our efforts in terms of suicide prevention, we can make a lot of progress in reducing unnecessary deaths. And
do you have the statistics on men versus women with gun deaths? Because I have heard it is much higher with men. Do you know the numbers on that?
I don't know specific numbers off the top of my head, but absolutely, you're right. And then this goes back to the point you made about how fast somebody acts when they have a suicidal thought or suicidal impulse. And a male is more likely to grab a gun if they make that tragic decision to end their life. They're more likely to grab a gun.
And women are more likely to use methods that maybe they survive and then they can get help from.
Exactly right. And so if you use a gun, it's gonna work, right? Like more often than not, and you're gonna, that life is gonna end. Whereas to your point, a woman is gonna maybe try pills or something like that, where they're more likely to have their life saved and then get a chance to get help and continue with their life. And so that's why I've been spending a lot of time trying to figure out how to interrupt that step of when somebody has suicidal thoughts, just interrupting their access to a firearm, basically keeping the gun out of somebody's hands at the wrong time. And there's ways to do that through safely storing your gun in your house. And
let's talk a little bit more about who it is that is killing themselves, who it is that is thinking about suicide. And we just talked about it could happen to anybody. Talked a lot about how men are typically more successful on average than women. We also know that depression rates as well as suicide rates are higher in white people than Asian people than Black people, and that is an interesting trend to talk about and understand a little bit about. And I don't know if you have any insights there. There's an interesting and tragic disease to be sick enough, in a moment and in enough of distress to be able to think about and then try to commit suicide. And then when, of course, you have access to a gun, it becomes all that much easier. I'll say, as a physician, one of the screening questions we always ask when someone is perhaps suicidal, you're not quite sure, it's not always that obvious, is do you have access to a gun? Because if they don't, the risk of committing suicide goes way down.
Wow.
And something that makes it more safe to kind of discharge that person back into their life. Then instead of, the worry goes down a bit. So it's a large part of what we do in medicine every day.
Right. And so there are a lot of folks who are dealing with traumatic, occurrences in their life, or just really hard situations. And we don't have the support community, the support network set up in a lot of ways to be able to help people work through those situations. So, for example, veterans, suicide rates are elevated among veterans who have come home from traumatic experiences overseas, fighting wars, and they don't get the support that they need to deal with the trauma that they've experienced. And so it stands to reason that they're going to have elevated rates of depression and other mental health issues that might lead them towards suicide.
Mhm.
Similarly, with the depressed economic situations in a lot of rural America, where you talked about white men who traditionally have been sort of the economic supporters of such communities, and now all of a sudden their opportunities to be economically sound and providers for their family and all of those kinds of things have shrunk. There's not as many opportunities, and so they feel lost and in despair. And there's a whole literature on this sort of the economics of despair and how people are really lost and not sure which direction to turn. And so you put all those things together, and you can understand why there are elevated rates of these mental health issues, which then sadly lead to suicide in some cases in these specific subpopulations of folks. And it's often white men, white middle-aged older men.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about that with the culture, because I am so concerned about everyone right now. So many people in our country are suffering. They're facing hard times financially. And I think a lot of humans, it's our human nature to take it personally. Like, this is my fault. I did this. I should be providing for my family. I should be feeding them. I should be having health insurance, or I shouldn't be sick, or I shouldn't be having these mental health problems, and they stuff it down. And I think if we can just shine a light on, many people suffer. There is no shame. There is no guilt. But it is extremely important that you find your loved ones that care about you, and you tell them you're struggling. And you can also, get therapy if you're able. But again, that's a whole nother separate issue of, do you have insurance? Can you pay for therapy? Can you find high quality therapy? Because when I had my suicidal thoughts, I couldn't immediately get into therapy. I called 988, the suicide number, after the suicide scare was over, to get help. And the people on the phone helped connect me with people that took my insurance, and I was able to find therapy. It took about a month, and I got in early. But I shared it with my friends, and I was able to find a retired therapist. Her first name is Nancy, who just swooped in and took me to lunch and gave me the best therapy possible right away, like days after. And so we need to have our people, everybody. This can happen to anybody. It happened to me. It can happen to anybody. Do you have trusted people that you can call? Oh no, I'm having these thoughts. Can you call someone in the middle of the night? Will they answer you? Call the suicide hotline. Know the 988 number. Like, take away the shame. This is human beings. We can only handle so much stress in our lives before
Yep.
our brains go to this. And another thing I wanted to say is, we are friends. Tim and I are friends with Brian Zimmerman, who is a Special Forces veteran, and he has a show on our program. What's it called? The Roundtable.
Roundtable.
And he openly talks about his own mental health and how he's this guy with these giant arm muscles. He's like the manliest person you've ever seen in your life. And he's openly saying, we need to talk about our mental health struggles. And I know it has helped having that show. But I mean, what do you all think? You all are white men. Has it been hard on you all to open up when you are mentally struggling? I mean,
Yeah.
Of
So
course. Yeah, I
go
mean,
for it, Joe.
it's a problem ingrained in our culture, that it's not okay for men in particular to open up about their struggles and their problems and seek help. I mean, we've known forever that men are just bad at even going to the doctor. Well, Tim would know this. Like I don't know. We think we're invincible. We're not going to mess with it. We're not going to get screened for the things we should get screened for. And this kind of falls into that same category. I do think there's great untapped potential in our small rural communities in Indiana or whatever, where people will absolutely show up and show out and support people who are struggling in their community. If they know about it, they will do it. It happens over and over again. Sarah, you have that story of it happening to you. You couldn't get the formal into sort of formal services to help, but you had that informal support network. And I think that's a real thing, but people have to know that there's a need.
Yeah.
And they will respond and do amazing things.
Yeah. If you're a male out there listening and you're struggling, it's okay that you're struggling. It's not all your fault. Get rid of the guilt and shame. And do you have friends? Do you have loved ones? And it doesn't take much. Just call them up and talk and just tell them. It's not as hard as you think it is. It's just literally doing it. Tim.
988 is there. The way our healthcare system works, it has a lot of gaps. Mental health care is one of them. Telemedicine is a huge boon to mental health care right now, and there's plenty of apps and things you can use online to be able to be set up with someone sometimes the same day.
Oh, that's nice.
But our BetterHelp, there's others, and so the point I want to make is around the social safety net that we have in America comes to literally a constitutional right that you have to care by going to the emergency department, and you can't be turned away. So if you go to an emergency department, you come to me and see me, and you say, I need to see you, I need to talk, I am having suicidal thoughts, I want to hurt myself, I want to hurt someone else, whatever it may be that's on your mind, we will take care of you, and we will see you, and we'll try to get you resources. Even though we'll try, those resources for having a therapist are very thin in terms of outpatient therapy. It's really hard, but it is a good place to get hooked in right away. It's not ideal in any way to go to the emergency department unless it's a true emergency, but it's there for you.
I mean, that's a
and
true
we'll assess it.
emergency. If you are thinking of harming
for
yourself,
sure.
that is a true emergency and you are allowed. And that's a good point because
1,000%.
you should not be alone. You should not be alone. When it happened to me, my three children were sound asleep. My husband was at a concert. I was alone and I knew to call people. So I called my husband. He wasn't
Yep.
there. I called my mom. She answered. And then my husband answered. And then he stayed up with me until 3 a.m. until I could go to sleep. But I mean, like, don't be alone. Find someone that cares about you. And that means emergency room. Those people will care about you. Yeah.
Yep.
That's a good
Yep.
tip. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. And we'll care about you. And even if people are having a hard day and they don't feel like caring too much, it's the law. We cannot turn you away. So that is a net that is always there for your safety.
And maybe call 988 while we have that service and talk to them while you're driving there. Just call somebody. Don't be alone in your scary thoughts. I cannot tell you enough how much that helped me. As soon as someone else was listening to me and I was crying and telling them what was in my head, they quickly shut that down. No, Sarah, you're not a terrible mom. No, Sarah, you didn't hurt your child. No, Sarah, you didn't harm your husband. They are fine. And then I was like, it really helped them to go away. So I was willing to be vulnerable and say what those scary thoughts were. So say it. Say what the thoughts are is to someone that cares about you or a professional. Yeah.
So John, we talked a bit about people and who it is that this is happening to, and it's happening to everybody. But then there's the question of quote unquote success is the word we use in medicine. It's probably a terrible word, and for research and public health too. The success you have in committing suicide is higher in men often, but it's certainly higher in people who have access to firearms.
Right.
It seems obvious, but has it been studied to why? I don't want to just assume that that's obvious, that you have a firearm and therefore you could be more likely to commit suicide.
You can tell I'm in the university because there's real live students who just showed up. And there's also construction going on outside. So I need to
making the episode more exciting, John.
Right,
If you watch
exactly.
live, you get to see them. You get a tour of, behind the scenes here.
Relocate myself. Sorry about that.
That's
Don't worry about it. Here we are. Now you.
Yep. So, your question was, why is it that
If you
you're
have a gun, you are more likely to be successful
it's
at committing suicide. What is it about,
it's
having the gun? Yep.
yeah. I mean, it's just that again that decision is a very impulsive. When the decision to actually take the act is very impulsive. It happens very fast, and so if you have easy access to a firearm, um, it's just going to be more effective at doing the terrible job that you want it to do, um, because it's such a, a powerful, effective, damaging piece of equipment. It will simply do the job in
Yeah.
that very short time frame. So if we don't have if there's no way to interrupt that process, then it's just more likely to be effective. And so that's why um, I've been spending a lot of time trying to understand the behavior of safe storage of firearms. So, so there's a couple strategies. Safe storage is one where if you're going to have a gun in your home, then in order to prevent suicide or to prevent other terrible things from happening, preventing children from getting access to the gun, basically preventing people who shouldn't have access to it from getting it. A way to interrupt that is to safely store it. So if you imagine a situation where somebody is in that impulsive moment, but the gun is in a safe, it's not loaded, the ammunition is separate from the gun, and so you have to go through all of those steps. You have to remember the combination to the gun lock, unlock the gun lock, load the gun, do all the things. Then that might be enough time to interrupt that impulsive decision where you're like, wait a second, maybe I shouldn't do this, or that's enough time for somebody to intervene, or ideally, if you're somebody who's struggling with mental health issues, and you live in a house where people are aware that this is going on, then they have locked the gun up and you don't even have access to it. You don't
Right.
even
That's what I was going to say. If
you don't
if you're willing to admit you're struggling, that would be a good time to have someone else change the combination to those weapons and the bullets, and so that you physically cannot get to them while you're going through this. If you can admit this is a vulnerable time for me, but it's
Right.
so hard. Like my stress happened in like 3 days. It was like 3 days of escalation and very quickly. So it was just so fast that it's kind of good to plan ahead. Just realize it can happen to anybody. Men that are listening, it's particularly dangerous for you, white men especially in America. Do you have a plan so that if you have those scary thoughts, you won't do that thing?
Yeah, and we've done a lot of research on this, talking to gun owners, and a lot of them will say, I'm a responsible gun owner. Of course, I lock my firearm up, right? And that's just part of it. I don't. The last thing I want to have happen is for my gun to get into the wrong hands, whether that's the hands of a kid, a child who doesn't know how to use it, or to somebody who's struggling. And so I think that's just a message we need to spread. With the most recent data I saw on this was that around, I think, 40 or 42% of homes in Indiana have a gun. And so then the next question is, in how many of those cases is that gun stored safely so that it does not get into the wrong hands?
And we don't have info on that, do we?
No.
And can you define safely for us, especially for those who don't own guns, to understand what that would be like? People might not be able to imagine
Yeah.
what a safe gun looks like.
So safe storage is usually defined as the weapon is not loaded, the ammunition is separate from the gun, and the gun is locked, whether that's locked in a safe or in a gun cabinet or has a cable trigger lock. So there are devices where you like string a really heavy duty plastic through the chamber of a gun, and that makes it impossible to close and fire and close and shoot it. You have to know the combination to it, open it, and then get the ammunition that's stored separately in there to load and get it all ready to go. So it's a multi-step process to get access to that weapon. So that's kind of what safe storage is all about. And and a lot of the people we talk to think that that's just part of being a responsible gun owner. And
But
so,
we don't know how many people are being responsible gun owners.
You're right. We know that too many are not. And so we've been trying to do a lot of work to try to figure out how to spread that message and say, hey, if you're somebody who has a gun in your home, okay, but let's think about storing it safely so that we can prevent these unnecessary gun deaths.
What is this? What is the scope of the problem? How many people in Indiana a year are we talking about that lose their lives to self-harm through guns? Or in the U.S.? Yeah.
In Indiana, it's a total gun deaths are around 12 or 1,300
a year.
Yes, a year. And then roughly 60% of those, so like 600 or so, are suicides.
Wow.
600, 700 each year are suicides.
And so we're very worried. We are very worried, especially like parents. We're very worried about gun violence and what the media is showing us. And you're telling us, if you look at the facts, the majority of gun violence is self-harm, suicide. So we should be talking more about this. I mean, that's why we're having this show. This is Suicide Prevention Month. But I am surprised because the media is so pumping out the mass shootings, which are also a problem.
Oh, for sure.
But this is, if you look at the numbers, an even bigger one. My own 15-year-old son, while he was driving, he has his learner's permit. So while he was driving to band practice this week, he had me looking up gun facts on the internet. He was asking me specific questions because he had heard about a recent school shooting. And so I was looking it up. And so I need to tell him this new information because he is worried. He has fear. He goes to a public high school. And so I think on one way, it kind of makes me feel better about the mass shooting problem, but it makes me more concerned about the real issue that you're talking about, how people are actually getting harmed by guns in our state and our country. So it's just like we need to shift our focus, I think, to all of the things, but we're not talking about this enough.
It's all of the things, because the sad truth is that in recent years, the most common preventable cause of death among youth in our country is guns. Whether you're talking about suicide or mass shootings, but really or just the everyday sort of gun violence that people in certain neighborhoods are faced with on just day to day. People with too many easy access to guns again.
Yeah.
Creating a problem. So it's everything all combined that creates such a large, really preventable, and that's the key thing. It's preventable, largely preventable public health issue in our country.
And as a gun owner, how do you find out? How do you know? How do you access all of the different ways to keep a gun more responsibly? Where's that education coming from?
There's lots of places. I mean, I think one of the key places anybody could go in their community would be the fire department or police department to get information on that, and they probably have free gun locks that they would pass out.
Oh, nice.
A lot of communities have those. There's a lot of small gun violence prevention organizations scattered throughout the country that do a lot of gun lock distribution programs. Depending on your situation, you can you can order a gun safe on Amazon, right? I think there's a lot of ways to do this. Just speaking locally here, the Bloomington Police Department is also concerned about people who have guns in their vehicles. So they will provide safes for people to keep in their cars, so that people, if they have a firearm in their vehicle, then there's a small safe that they can have in their car to lock it up. In instances where they can't take it into a business or a bar or something like that, they have to leave it in their car. If you're going to leave it in your car, you want it to be locked up. So
yeah, because cars get broken into all the time.
So somebody can't steal it out of your car, right?
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. So there are a lot of free resources if you search for them in most local communities, where you can even get this stuff for free.
Oh, so, sure. Yes. Yeah. We were talking about veterans. The Indiana Department of Veterans Affairs does a lot of gun lock giveaway programs. So you could get in touch with your local Veterans Affairs office. They could surely, if you're a vet or a family member of a vet, you could certainly access resources through the VA or other veteran support organizations in your community.
I'd just like to thank every single person that's helping with that. That makes me feel good that there are all these people in our community trying to get this free stuff to help prevent deaths, prevent harm. And I'm just so thankful that those places exist, because I really didn't know about that before you told us.
Right. And then there's one other thing I want to just mention that's important that people know about, and is kudos to the state of Indiana, is that Indiana was one of the first states and is a leading state on extreme risk protection orders, or some people call them red flag laws. In Indiana, it's called the Jake Laird Law, where police officers can, or anybody can go to a judge and get firearms removed from someone who they deem to be in danger of harming themselves or others. And
would they need proof? How would they go to do that?
So they would just need to contact law enforcement and explain the situation to their local law enforcement about what's going on, and let them handle it. And this is, something, again, that not everyone knows about.
No, I didn't know that.
And not even within sort of the legal and judicial systems in the state. Like, there's even some knowledge gaps among law enforcement and judges about how this whole thing works. And so that's another useful strategy that we have that has been shown to be effective to, again, keep guns out of the hands of people who shouldn't have them in a particular time when they're struggling in their life for whatever reason. And so the Jake Laird laws is an important thing for people to know about.
Is there other states that have that law? I didn't know Indiana had it.
There are.
There are.
Yeah.
So you just have to look it up and see in your particular state if something like that. I guess you could look up, what would you do if you were made aware someone has weapons that shouldn't have it? What can you do in your state? And then try to do those things.
Yeah. If you live outside of Indiana, I would just Google does my state have a red flag law?
Oh, okay. Red flag. Okay.
And that would point you in the right direction. In Indiana, it's named after a state police officer, Jake Laird, who was killed in the line of duty by somebody who had access to a firearm who shouldn't. And so that's where that came from. But yeah, Indiana should get some kudos for being on the leading edge of that. We just need to do a better job of spreading the word and making sure that law is used as effectively as it could be.
So, John, there's so many people that you're talking about, who die from self-harm gun deaths every year, that the numbers are sufficiently large that it seems like you can actually study some of these interventions as a public health researcher like yourself, in terms of states that have red flag laws versus not. Like, you can have a control that way. Is there any data to say that anything we talked about right now works, or is it just a good idea?
No, there are definitely data to suggest that these things work. And there have been plenty of studies that have compared states with better implementation or coverage of these kinds of policies versus states that don't have these kinds of policies, whether it's a red flag law or a law requiring safe storage of your firearm or more comprehensive background checks or any of these kind of policy options. Those states have less gun violence. They have less shootings. They have less homicides. They have less suicides. That's just the way it is. I will say that it's important maybe for people to know that the research in this area is behind where it should be. But we are behind really comprehensively understanding this issue and having a lot of strong evidence that you're asking about. And that's because several years ago, the federal government actually stopped funding gun violence research because of this this amendment called the Dickey Amendment that was put into law that prevented gun violence research from being used to advocate for any sort of policy interventions to prevent the problem. And so that meant with no federal funding, nobody doing studies on this, or very few studies on this. Like the only studies were kind of funded by private organizations, private foundations, and that kind of thing. And then just not a lot of researchers going into this because we couldn't make our careers about this because there was no way to fund the work.
Wow.
And I think, if you compare that, again, going back to what we were talking about earlier, compare that to the issue of cigarette smoking, a lot of resources went into that. We were lots of research enterprise to figure out the problem, figure out that it's related to all kinds of cancers and heart disease and all kinds of negative health outcomes, and then take the next step of, okay, how do we help people quit? How do we keep people from starting to smoke in the first place? Lots of money goes into that research, figuring out what the effective solutions are. And then once you have the effective solutions, how do you spread them throughout our communities? And wow, magic. We have now reduced dramatically the rates of cigarette smoking in the country. You could say the same thing about motor vehicle crashes. We used to have too many people getting injured and killed on the highways. And so what did we do? We did a lot of research and figured out a lot of policy interventions that would be effective. We implemented seatbelt laws. We figured out airbags. We made cars safer, made roads safer, all kinds of things. And guess what happened? Motor vehicle crash morbidity and mortality went way down. We can do the same thing with this issue. If we invest resources, do the right research, figure out what works, and then spread those effective interventions in our communities, we can solve this problem.
Yeah, bringing up the cigarette smoking is such a good point, because we did invest money in the government, education, laws. We did invest in that to lessen it, and it worked. We can do this with this issue too. But right now we're doing the opposite. We're cutting. So that's interesting that you said you can't really go into it and have a living off of it because you can't get funded your research. So yeah, that seems to be a problem to me. Yes, Tim.
Where are you getting your funding now to do the research that you're doing these days?
We were very fortunate to get a gift at IU from a private donor to kind of kickstart research in this area at IU. And we've tried to leverage that gift to get whatever sort of funding we could find to do some of these small studies. And then, like I said, there are private foundations in the country. There's the Joyce Foundation, but there are others who fund this kind of work, and I'm grateful for those opportunities. So that's what we do. we go out and beat the bushes and look for whatever sort of funding that we could get to do the work that we can. It's disappointing that resources at the federal level are going the wrong direction for research, and it just makes it that much more difficult for us to be able to do the kind of work we need to do to figure out solutions to these problems.
It becomes so politicized, but I guess we're talking about 60% of gun deaths is something that is certainly not political.
It's not political.
Right here.
It's not political at all. It's a public health issue, just like cigarette smoking was a public issue, just like motor vehicle crashes was a public health issue. Just add it to the list. If you can take the politics out of it and realize this is just a problem we need to come together and solve, we can do it.
And it's not just the politics, it's also the fear. We have a stigma in our country. We do not want to talk about this. When someone dies by suicide, it's very hard to even find that information out. Usually only the closest family and friends know. We don't make it public and say this is a public health crisis and we need to help our community make sure this doesn't happen again. I know there are unfortunately many celebrities that die this way. And on a show I was listening to with an expert about suicide talking, they said there was one famous celebrity who helped lessen suicide, and that was Kurt Cobain, because when Kurt Cobain died by suicide, his wife Courtney Love was very public about the horrors of it. She would openly cry and say how awful this was, and so it didn't have a spike. Other times celebrities dying by suicide would increase, the numbers would increase nationwide, and so we need to talk about it. I know we need to take out the social stigma of this is something to be ashamed of. This can happen to anybody. And so if we can all work together, those of us watching this, and just take away the stigma, you don't have to do what I did and put it on Facebook that you're having suicidal thoughts and you need help, because that's what I did, and it did work. But I do think we need to be more open and honest about the things affecting our community. I bet most of us know someone, love someone that has died this way. And it's preventable. And so the shame and the stigma are stopping the preventableness of it, is what I'm saying. That's a factor too.
Yeah, this is an issue that likely has touched all of us. I can remember I was a kid, and our next door neighbor shot himself, killed himself. And when I was a kid, and it's like, wow, it has a big impact on you. And then when I was a freshman in college, one of my dorm mates down the hall shot himself during finals week. And in both of those cases, it was a firearm. They had access to a gun and shot themselves. And it was a terrible, tragic event. And then, like you say, we've likely all been affected by this issue in some way, and that's the bad news. The good news is that it's largely preventable. We can do something about this by talking about it, as you mentioned, getting it out in the open, talking through these issues, improving our mental health services that are available to people, having people take advantage of the informal support networks in their communities, and then also being smart about how we store guns in our home and keeping them out of the hands of people of people who shouldn't have them.
Zeke just asked. Sorry.
Just add in the 988, as well as that you can go to your local fire department or police department to find resources, sometimes free, to be able to lock up your guns more safely. Sorry, go ahead, Sarah, about Zeke.
Yeah, Zeke did a great comment. You don't sound insensitive, Zeke. This is a great question. He said, I'm actually more surprised successful people still commit. I just didn't get it. They're well known, respected, have fans, got money, but how is that not enough? Well, that shows you money, fans, fame. That's not the things we need as human beings to be happy. So like a lot of people go out for that and try to find the celebrity and the fame, and that's not actually what matters in life. So once they get there, if they're committing suicide. Well, that shows you that's not the answer to life. In my opinion, it's loving those around you. It's small
Yeah.
acts of kindness. It's taking care of yourself and others and being open and honest. And a lot of people don't know how to be open and honest with ourselves because of our culture. So I think that leads to them. I'm personally very upset about. I think everybody has celebrities they're upset about. I was really sad about the Soundgarden lead singer, Chris Cornell. He was one of my favorite singers. I loved his voice. I loved his words and his wisdom. And he had beat addiction, and he was happily married. And that one really surprised me. And then after that, it was like the anniversary of his death was the Linkin Park lead singer, and he did it on the anniversary of Chris Cornell. And it's like, this is an epidemic. We need to realize people are people. Money and fame doesn't take away the fact that these are human beings and we should care about everybody. And I think there's a lot of, I struggled with this too, you guys. I'm not saying other people do it. There's a lot of jealousy with people being wealthy or people being famous or people being attractive or people having so much access to money that it seems like they could get all their problems solved. But that's not reality. Everybody struggles. Every single person is susceptible to these suicidal thoughts. We need to be aware of that. And that goes for celebrities too. It goes for every single person.
There is real data around money and happiness, and that the more you make, the more happy you are up until a point, and then it starts to go back down.
Yeah.
So I think that number somewhere around $100,000 a year is where it kind of caps out. I don't know what the most recent number is, and then you start. Money doesn't do anything for your happiness after that.
Yeah.
But as
Yeah.
long as
Money
it,
so matters that you have money to healthcare, that you have all these
right,
access to things. But once you reach that level, then it doesn't really help you anymore. And
with
I would,
happiness.
yeah, it doesn't have, yeah,
Mhm.
that's a good point. Yeah, definitely.
So, John, so I know you have to go soon. First of all, thank you so much for taking this
Thank
long
you.
time to go through this issue. The
Yeah.
a voice of professionalism, a voice of actually understanding the facts, but also someone who's obviously passionate and compassionate in the thing that you're studying and the people who are suffering from this. Is there anything else you would want us to know that we haven't talked about, or reiterate what we have?
I mean, I would just, the timing for this episode is September, and this is National Suicide Prevention Awareness Month, and so not that it needs to just be 1 month, but is those sort of campaigns are useful to raise awareness around an issue, and I think it's a good thing that we're doing this, and I appreciate you hosting the show and putting a spotlight on this issue, and just would like to remind everyone that it's real, and people struggle, and it's okay to struggle, and it's okay to ask for help. And I am optimistic that we can figure out solutions to these things that we're facing. It just requires us to kind of collectively get on the same page and decide, we're going to do this. We can figure this out, and let's go. So that's what I'm hopeful for.
Well, thank you so much for the work you do. We hope that you continue to get the dollars that you need to have a thriving
Me
career
too.
doing this.
And yeah, thanks for the private
Yeah,
donor. We're relying on
exactly.
you right now. So thank you. Thank you for funding this. Thank you, John. It really meant a lot to me that you're out here looking at the numbers, tracking this data, because I knew some of this. I did not know a lot of what you taught us. So this helps shape my framing and how do I protect my community? How do I help get this information out to everyone so that we can just love each other, love ourselves, and lessen suicide deaths?
Yeah.
And John,
Thanks for spreading the word.
if there's one place that people should go to learn more, where should they go on the
Uh,
internet? Mhm.
yeah, I mean, I think the 988 suicide prevention hotline is a great place to start. Not just calling it, but you can get online and look up, and there would be all kinds of resources to help as a starting point.
Oh, and you don't just have to be the person having the suicidal thoughts. My husband used that number and my mom used that number to comfort me. Like they were like, what do we do to help her? This is surprising. We didn't know Sarah was going to do this. She's the strong one in the family. You know, what do we do? And they gave them tips, and those tips helped me. So you don't have to be the person. You can just care about someone and use that number. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's a call, text, chat type situation. You don't even have to pick up the phone to call.
Wow.
That is actually something that gets in the way sometimes of people reaching out. It's a texting service too. If you go on the website, there's a chat.
That's nice. Yeah. Thank you to all those people that do this service. Thank you to everybody that helps prevent these suicide deaths. I'm just so thankful because this is a condition that affects so many people, and you know, I'm just thankful. Jon, you got to teach a class. Yep. Tim, I want to talk to you for just a minute before we leave, if you're okay. I know you're tired.
Sure.
But have fun with your class, and keep in touch and let us know if you want to come back on about any other issue. Thank you so much.
I'm always happy to talk public health. So
thank you.
Thanks a lot, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, Jon.
Bye. So I just want to acknowledge everybody. My friend and co-founder, Dr. Tim Peck, has been you've been working, what, 8 days in a row, 7 days in a row, night shifts?
Eight nights in a row. Yeah, just got off the 8th one.
And you normally work, what, 6 to 6?
6 p.m. to 6 a.m. Yep.
6 p.m. to 6 a.m. And you're on your 8th day. And then you and then you're in your car to do this because Jon had specific times he could do this. I just want to thank you. And I hope that you can take some time to rest after this. But sometimes, now that I know you as a personal close friend, I know that brain is always working. How do you help people? How do you help people? And sometimes it's hard to shut it off. So I hope you can sleep, my friend.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to do some good sleeping today, but also having some exciting things happening where my wife, who many of you know and have seen on Project Next around her running, she's an all-American college runner who runs marathons, and she just had, our son. He's now just turned 3, and she's now running marathons strong as she was before. And we are going to do one of the world majors. So there's 6 marathons around the world that are the major marathons. She's done 4 of them. This will be her 5th in Berlin. And so the family's going to go there to support her. And then it happens to be Oktoberfest as well. Just happens to be. So we're going we're going to have some fun there. But also we're going to visit a concentration camp and be able to learn a lot there, and hopefully bring some of those lessons back to Project Next.
Yeah, I hope you have a great time. Your wife is fantastic. I love seeing her race. She is so fast. She, like local races, she usually can win, come close to the top. Yeah, she's pretty amazing. I think that's wonderful that she gets to do this and you get to support her, and I hope you just have the best time ever.
Yeah.
Oh, and if you are listening to this and you know somebody that you are worried about, I just hope that you take a minute to share this episode. You know, you can share it on YouTube or Facebook or podcasts. It's on Apple and Spotify. It's also on our website, and you can get emails if you want to go to Project Next Indiana. But I just love my community so much, and I am particularly worried about men because it's in our culture, especially in my area. It's not, cool to open up about your feelings or struggles. You're not supposed to ever admit that you struggle. And that is why this is such a problem with these spiking numbers in suicide deaths. So I just, send it to someone. I'm going to send it to Brian and see what he thinks, because this is an issue he cares a lot about, and see his thoughts on it.
And Jon was talking about how suicide death, especially by gun, is very high in veterans, very high in police and law enforcement, and we're having an epidemic of that right now in southern Indiana, including someone from Scott County Department that recently shot himself in front of his ex-wife. So it's terrible. So yeah, this doesn't just touch some people that that are unknown or kind of fuzzy. It happens in our community, happens to our leaders, happens to the people who protect us. And if we're talking about it more, it'll happen less.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Talk about your mental health with someone and love yourself. That's another thing. Once I got out of this, I was like, oh, I'm not going to work with people that didn't care about me or my mental health again like that. Like, I can choose who I spend my time with. And so it really changed my friendships and it changed who I'm willing to work with. Because if someone is going to care so little about me and my mental health, why would I give them my time? Like,
Yeah.
it just really shifted everything for me, and honestly, if this didn't happen to me, Tim, you and I would not be talking right now
Mm.
because I reached out, because I got therapy, that's what made me run for state house, and that's how you and I met. So, I'm thankful it happened. I don't ever wanna do it again. It was
Yeah.
awful, but it made me a stronger person, and it made me stronger because I was willing to be so vulnerable and
Right.
open up. So
Yeah.
it's like
Thank you.
it's strength and vulnerability, which people don't think. People think if I'm
Yeah.
vulnerable, that's weakness. No, that's your
Yeah.
biggest strength right there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
leadership through vulnerability is the strongest leadership. So, thank you, Sarah, and thank you for everyone for watching. Dr. Tim here. Please share this on all your socials. These shows have been shared so widely, and they go to people that you do not know. Once you share it, and someone else shares it, they affect people. We get feedback from people around getting this message out around public health issues and people getting knowledge that they wouldn't have had otherwise. So your amplifying this goes a long way. So thank you to all the viewers and listeners for doing so.
And feel free to open up in the comments if you want to about how you feel. If you are a personal friend of mine, you can call, message, text, Facebook message, whatever, get a hold of me if you are struggling because we care about people and we want to lessen this and let's get the word out. So we love you, we care about you. Thank you for listening to this very personal and hard to hear discussion and let's make positive change in this country and let's work together. Tim, I hope
Awesome.
you get some sleep
Thank you.
and rest. And I hope you have the best time ever with your family on this trip. I'm so
Yeah,
excited for you and happy for
appreciate
you.
it. Happy
Yeah,
for happy for Missy. She's put so much work into it, 50 miles plus a week. The greatest part about it is that her son gets to see her his mom go out and do all of this hard work and achieve something, and she's such a role model to him and to so many others. But he's so proud of her, and so it'd be
go
great that he gets to
Missy.
see
I
it. Yeah,
cannot wait to see the stuff from this. Yes, go
yeah.
Missy. I'm so proud of you, girl. You are amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. Bye everybody and have a wonderful day and thank you for listening. This was a conversation really dear to my heart. Thanks for inviting me, Tim, and for finding John. Thank you. Bye
Yeah.
everybody.